This is GovExec Date, where we bring you the federal stories that really matter. It's September 24th, 2021. I'm Ross Fortuna. Government work is too often derided, and federal employees are often seen in the popular imagination as lazy, incompetent, or worse. But public servants have shown resilience and ingenuity since the novel coronavirus pandemic hit the world 18 months ago. In 2019, during the 50th anniversary year of our first magazine issue, GovExec launched the Government Hall of Fame and Theodore Roosevelt Government Leadership Awards. The Hall of Fame inductees have had an historic impact on changing government for the better, and its inaugural class included such luminaries as Constance Berry Newman, Katherine Johnson, and Dr. Anthony Fauci. The inaugural Hall of Fame inductees and Teddy Award winners were subsequently honored at a gala here in D.C. Last year, the 2020 Hall of Fame and Teddies were presented during an all-online event. This year, there will be a series of events online to honor the Teddy Award winners and Hall of Famers. This week, GovExec announced the Government Hall of Famers and Theodore Roosevelt Government Leadership Award winners. You can learn more about our Hall of Fame and Teddy events at www.governmenthalloffame.com. Tom Shoop is editor-at-large and the former executive vice president and editor-in-chief at GovExec Media. He'll join me next to discuss the Government Hall of Fame and Theodore Roosevelt Government Leadership Awards.
Local governments are on the front lines of one of the defining challenges of our time, advancing economic mobility for youth, families, and communities. They need solutions that work in education, health, housing, job training, and more. The Economic Mobility Catalog is a resource that identifies proven strategies that help cities and countries drive upward mobility for their residents. Learn more about this new resource from Results for America by visiting catalog.resultsforamerica.org.
The coronavirus pandemic has shown the importance of government work in stark reality over the last 18 months. The Government Hall of Fame and Theodore Roosevelt Government Leadership Awards were started by GovExec in 2019 to honor those who have achieved great things as federal officials and as industry leaders. GovExec this week announced the Government Hall of Fame and Theodore Roosevelt Government Leadership Award winners. Tom Shoop is editor-at-large at GovExec Media. He joins the show now to discuss the Hall of Fame and the Teddies. Welcome back to the program.
Great to be back. I think this is my first appearance as editor-at-large as opposed to editor-in-chief, which is what I used to be.
Yeah, it's a changing world, and you've got changing titles.
I've been telling people it's not to be confused with editor who is large, which is also what I've become during this pandemic.
Yeah, we've all been. I can't say we've all been. I know I'm sympathetic, and then I've been eating a lot of things I've baked. But you're still involved, pretty seriously with the Teddies and the Hall of Fame. So, for the listeners who aren't familiar with it, what does the event and our gala and the awards, what do they honor and how?
Sure. So we started this awards program in 2019 because the real driving idea was that there are people who, throughout the course of American history, who have done just incredible things for the federal government, and many people who are still doing them today. And we thought they ought to have a Hall of Fame, just like athletes and other folks in other lines of work have. And this never existed. There's lots of great awards programs around. But this was a chance to really do something a little different. And then we decided to add on to it the Theodore Roosevelt Awards, which are annual awards for people currently in the federal government or in industries that partner with federal agencies to recognize their work. And the way I like to think of it is that the Hall of Fame is a Hall of Fame like the Baseball Hall of Fame, and the Teddy Awards, as we like to call them, are an all-star team. And these are the people who, some of them I'm sure will end up in the Hall of Fame, but they're doing current things that are really driving government forward and meeting agency missions.
So in 19, we were all together. We were at the National Cathedral for the event. Last year, everything was remote. What's it looking like this year? How are people going to be able to access it?
It was looking like we were going to have an in-person gala again, which was a great evening. And then the Delta variant came along, and we decided that was probably imprudent to get a large crowd of people together. So we're still in virtual mode, but we're doing some cooler stuff this year. We're going to have small groups of people come to the National Cathedral in Washington and record video tributes and acceptance speeches. And that's going to be hosted by Major Garrett of CBS News. And then we're going to have a series of videos honoring the Teddy Award winners, and they'll be broadcast over a week starting October 25th. And we're also going to have a 1-hour broadcast if you're in Washington locally on WUSA 9. So all of this, there's information about this at governmenthalloffame.com, which is the website where you can go for the virtual experience, see the current members of the hall, and learn more about what we're doing at our virtual gala.
It's I'm upset to not be able to wear my tuxedo again, though I didn't last year either. Although I guess I could probably just put it on at home while I'm watching and do up my bow tie and stuff. I know that's not no one's stopping me from doing that.
You're doing some voiceover work, right? So put it on for that.
I wasn't going to mention it, but yeah, I will be recording a lot of the voiceover for the awards program. So perhaps, yeah, I'll get all dolled up for that. So for this year, we announced the winners this week of the Teddies and the new Hall of Famers. Who are you excited about, and who's sort of the notable names?
I'm excited about everybody, of course, and it's an incredibly difficult challenge for our awards committee, and we have a great awards committee to pick the people that we choose to honor, especially at the Hall of Fame level, because we're really looking each year to try to do a mix of people from throughout history and some currently serving people or recently serving folks in government who've done really, truly outstanding things. And one of the most interesting things to me is that when you set out to find people who've done great work in government, you discover that there are people in history who you didn't even know had a significant federal role. And this year, a couple of examples are Harriet Tubman, who everyone knows for the Underground Railroad, but who also had a very significant role helping the Union Army during the Civil War, and everything from washing clothes to leading, being one of the leaders of a very significant raid on the Combahee River in South Carolina that led to the freeing of hundreds of slaves in one night. More than I think she accomplished in the whole history of the Underground Railroad. So that was amazing. Another one is Rachel Carson, who played a tremendous role in inspiring the environmental protection movement and the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency itself, but got her start at what was then the Bureau of Fisheries as a biologist and a writer, one of only two professional women at the agency at the time she joined. And one of her projects was to write copy for, I believe it was a film strip or something. And her boss told her, "You're way too good a writer for a project like this. You should be writing books." And that's what she went on to do. So those are a couple of the people. There are some other big names. Alexander Hamilton gets into the hall this year, absolutely decisive in laying the foundation for the modern American government. And there apparently is a musical about him.
Yeah, I think I heard something about that.
Yes. Lonnie Bunch, the current head of the Smithsonian Institution and the driving force behind the creation of the National Museum of African American History. So those are just a few of the names. Some current folks: Linda Thomas Greenfield, the current ambassador to the United Nations. John Koskinen, former head of the IRS, who also handled the Y2K problem, for those of us old enough to remember when all the computers were supposed to fall apart at the turn of the year 2000, and they didn't. And people think,
yeah, they would have if it weren't for his work too.
Right. They think we just got lucky, but it actually was real work. So those are some of the folks who are going into the Hall of Fame. And the Teddy winners fall into 5 categories: visionaries, for people who are really doing forward-thinking stuff; directors, for great management; pathfinders, for advances in information technology; defenders, for those in the national security realm; and partners, who are industry folks and other non-government people who have made substantial contributions. And we've just, as usual, have just some really interesting stories there. Stephen Suter of the National Park Service is honored for his work in establishing a pilot autonomous vehicles program for transporting people in parks. Pauline Nunez, in the directors category, did amazing work with the census out in Denver with the pandemic and the legal challenges to the census, it was just an incredibly difficult thing to pull off. And she managed it in that region. In the Pathfinders category, among the people we're honoring is Katrina Tyler of NASA for their risk management program, which is amazing. And the partners category is really interesting to me this year because we're honoring Gilman Louie, who was in government as the original person to run In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital funded organization, and Gina Adams of FedEx, who led their efforts to help especially in the early days of the pandemic, with transporting test samples and all kinds of other stuff, worked closely with the White House on that effort. So it's a great and really, there's just some really interesting stories there of people doing great stuff.
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned up top, there's this constant, as our listeners know, this constant sort of derision towards feds and people involved with the federal government. But I think the last couple of years have shown that is often misplaced. And boy, do you really want government to work when you need it, as you would during, for example, a worldwide pandemic. And I'm glad that we can honor those who are doing that work.
Yeah, since we started this, and even before we started this, and it follows in the footsteps of a lot of these kinds of award programs, we always say, it's more important than ever that these people get recognized. And sadly, in a way, that keeps being true. And I'd love to live to see the day when people who work in the federal government and for the federal government are so widely recognized for the things they've accomplished that there's no need for this kind of program. But I don't think we're going to see that day anytime soon. And in the meantime, it's just great to add to the voices of people who are saying, stand up and recognize these people for their commitment to the country and to the missions of these agencies.
For sure. And again, when's the broadcast here in DC, just so we can get people interested in it?
October 21st, we'll be doing the Hall of Fame, and the week of the 25th, the Teddy Award winners will be honored. And all of this, again, you can find out information on governmenthalloffame.com.
I'm certainly looking forward to it, though, again, being involved, I'm a little biased, but I imagine you are as well. Tom, thanks for being on the show with us.
It's great to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to GovExec Daily. Our show was produced by Adam Butler and hosted by me, Ross John Virginia. We want to thank Tom Shoop for joining the program. Our music is the song Signals by Catfish Dancing. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us any feedback at podcast@govexec.com or hit us up on Twitter @govexec. We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk to you later.
Local governments are on the front lines of one of the defining challenges of our time, advancing economic mobility for youth, families, and communities. They need solutions that work in education, health, housing, job training, and more. The Economic Mobility Catalog is a resource that identifies proven strategies that help cities and countries drive upward mobility for their residents. Learn more about this new resource from Results for America by visiting catalog.resultsforamerica.org.